Hi, I'm Susan Papanicholas from How Does Your Garden Grow in Seattle, Washington. My dog Charlie and I are here in my own garden today in the middle of October. It's the peak of fall. The leaves are changing color. There's a nip in the air. It's absolutely glorious. And all of these colorful leaves mean that pretty soon that quintessential fall task of cleaning up those fallen leaves is going to be upon us. It's a pretty simple task, but there are a lot of different approaches to leaf cleanup in the fall, and there are a lot of gardeners who have pretty strong opinions about it. So I thought I would talk a little bit about different approaches to fall leaf cleanup and help you learn the pros and cons of cleaning up leaves and some tips on how to do it in your own garden so you can make the decision that is right for you in your own space. I think gardeners can fall on a spectrum from where on one side there's a lot of gardeners who would like to get the entire garden cleaned up at this time of year, have all the fallen leaves cleaned up, all the debris removed, and the garden is put to bed for the winter in a very neat and tidy way. On the other end of the spectrum, there are gardeners who like to leave all the fallen leaves in place and allow for the natural processes to decompose those leaves and keep it as natural as possible. The clean and tidy garden might look sterile to some gardens, and the natural garden might look messy to other gardeners. So you might fall somewhere in the middle of that spectrum or strongly at one end or the other, and that's okay. You can have your garden look exactly the way you want it to. I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits of the fallen leaves, though, to help you decide where you might actually want to leave some of the leaves in place. One of the biggest benefits to leaving the leaves in place when they fall in the garden is that it's easier. I think any place where we can save steps and not create as much work for ourselves in the garden, it should really be celebrated. And it is pretty darn easy to look out at those beautiful fallen leaves on the ground and leave them in place. Another benefit to leaving the leaves on the ground is that they act as a natural mulch in the garden. They fall down, they leave a layer of organic matter at the top of the soil, and that provides food for the microorganisms and bugs and worms that chew that up, break it down, incorporate it into the soil. So you've got a soil that's richer in organic matter, you're feeding your soil biome, and there's more organic matter available to your plants, which can lead to much healthier plants and healthier soil and less work for you. Another benefit to having those leaves left in place as mulch is that they provide a little insulating blanket over the top of the soil. That helps when you have pounding rain falling. It doesn't compact the soil or erode the soil. And also when you get extremely cold temperatures, that little buffer layer of leaves can insulate the soil a little bit and protect the plant roots from really cold temperatures. I think it looks beautiful. I think it really helps us enjoy and celebrate what's most beautiful about fall, to have the fallen leaves on the ground, to have those beautiful colors in the garden beds, and really make it feel very autumnal and beautiful at this time of year. It can get a little messy. So when I'm facing cleaning up fall leaves at this time of year, one of the first things I want to do is grab the leaves off of any place where they've gotten stuck on their way down. Sometimes they sort of get snagged on another plant's branches, or they build up in the middle of evergreen shrubs, or they get stuck somewhere on their way down to the ground. And to my eye, that looks really messy. So one of the first things I do is go through and pull them off the other plants, pull them any place they've gotten trapped, and bring them down to ground level. The next thing I want to do is rake up any leaves that have fallen on my lawn. And I want to do that as they're falling because I don't want to leave big spaces on the lawn where the leaves have built up and started rotting and are depriving the lawn of sun, because that's going to leave me with big muddy patches in my lawn over the winter. Another thing I like to do in this cleanup process is any place where I have plants that are susceptible to diseases, I want to rake those leaves up and put those in my municipal yard waste where they'll be taken away and composted at high temperatures. I don't want to leave them on the ground because that can allow for those pathogens to build up in the soil and cause disease problems over time. So if I'm worried about diseases, I'm going to rake those leaves up and get them out of my garden so that I'm not building up any problems for the future. Then I'm going to, in all of my hardscaping spaces, clean up very thoroughly. I want to get the leaves off of my paths, my stairs, my deck, my patio, any place that is a man-made space that isn't natural. I want to get those leaves cleaned up, partly so they don't decompose and rot in those spaces, but mostly because I think it looks prettier, and I really like to create that contrast between the cleaned up hardscape spaces that are man-made and the more natural spaces in my garden that are a little bit more wild. I like that contrast, and I think it helps enhance both of those spaces. And then for the rest of the leaves, I'm going to try to leave them in my garden beds. And I'm going to do that in a few different ways. I can take the leaves off of my lawn and put them into areas of the garden bed where there weren't leaves that fell, or spread out the piles of leaves, spread it out more evenly in the garden. I want to create a layer that's a few inches thick. I don't want it to be super thick, and I definitely don't want to have the leaves piled up against the trunks of trees and shrubs. I want to pull them away from woody plants so that we don't create a situation where as they decompose, they cause rotting. If you have really big, thick leaves in your garden that don't break down very quickly, like oak leaves, or I have a horse chestnut in my backyard that has huge leaves that don't really break down very fast, you could run those through a shredder so that they'll break down more quickly, and you won't be left with a lot of leaves still on the ground when the growing season starts again next spring. So when I'm done with my leaf cleanup in fall, I'll have my hardscape spaces cleaned up, I'll have gotten rid of any diseased plant material, I'll have gotten it removed from where it's gotten stuck in other plants, and I'll have a layer of leaves over the bare soil in my garden beds, helping to provide a natural mulch that will protect the soil and benefit the health of my plants this year. And to my eye, that's going to look really beautiful and help me make the most of this season, the beautiful colors and the natural processes that are in place in my garden.